Welcome back to another Beyond the Prompt teaser. We just spoke to Laura Jones. She's the CMO of Instacart. And what we kept coming back to was that with AI, everything is becoming good enough. And that's actually raises the bar. Because if AI can do something that works, the only thing that really stands out is true originality. The full episode is already live. I really hope you enjoy it.
Hi, I'm Laura Jones. I'm the CMO of Instacart. I just took a huge creative risk with our brand, and I'm here today to talk about preserving and amplifying originality and human creativity in the age of AI.
Jeremy, did you see the Super Bowl ad? If you're really being honest.
100% honest, and I watched it multiple times. I love that Super
I
Bowl.
love that Super Bowl
It
too.
reminded me of, Zoolander kind of, like the
Me too.
Zoolander side of Vince Stiller. It was just like, it was so perfect. Yeah.
Like in full disclosure, I was part of the crew that helped build Row that also had a Super Bowl ad. And the founder, Saman, wrote this quite cool, very, very long post about basically the argument of why it makes 1,000% sense to make these Super Bowls ad.
Mhm.
Specifically now, where basically everything is so commoditized, this is still one of the only places where you put something out and you're sure hundreds of millions of people going to watch it.
Hmm, hmm.
It's just worth a read.
Yeah, maybe we link it in the show notes.
Yeah,
That'd be
it's
cool.
done.
Yeah.
So, what was some of your main takeaways?
So Laura and I have known each other. We were in business school together, so we've known each other now nearly 20 years. And I've had as we even talked about, I've had the privilege of working with her team a few times. I think that her emphasis on cultivating the creativity of the team is so important as a
Mm,
differentiator, and to recognize that the safety and the courage and the risk taking that she enables on her team is what leads to exceptional product. I very much subscribe to that belief that the creative ability of the individuals that you choose to recruit and assemble will be a differentiator, or is presently a differentiator, right? I'm very much a subscriber to that. Do you want to take the opposite of that, or do you also agree? I'm just thinking about your AI advice to us recently to disagree more. So I'm trying to figure out whether I can poke you into disagreeing.
I mean, like, no, unfortunately, that one is tough to disagree because I do think that originality is going to be the thing that's going to set us apart of humans, right? If you can say something that is, you know, makes sense, quote on, like, then it's it's unlikely that the model won't kind of just tell that to you, right? And so, she was talking about, like, if I was asking the question as I'm obsessed about these days, which is what would you do if you got 60% of your time back, right? And
Yeah.
it did resonate a lot with me that trying to get out more and connect with the world. And then I realized a lot of the world now is online. So getting out of the office might get onto Reddit, but really try to understand what is the undercurrent of culture, I think will be very important for a marketeer, and finding ways of getting input so that you can have more original output is also going to be important. I mean, I think for a lot of us, when we go to a museum or go to a gallery or an art exhibition, we get all these ideas because suddenly somebody is giving us something which is not
Yeah.
the standard. And
Yeah.
so I'll find something else to vividly disagree with you on, but it's not going to be that one.
Well, here's one that I'd be curious to get your take on. Proof of craft. She mentioned there that they create B-roll to be able to demonstrate or prove that they actually made it. Do you think that's important in this day? I was kind of going back and forth as I was listening.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, there is this very aggressive stand against AI. And
Huh.
I can see that for brands that I'm involved in when they put something out, some of the comments will be, yeah, this is just AI and why is this not really? I will counter that because, for example, at Bark, we did a AI generated clay animation, and it's a beautiful piece of work
Hmm.
and it is very original and the characters inside are very thought through. Now they're all AI generated, but what obviously is sometimes lost in that discussion is that there was a person sitting there and generating all these ones. There was
Yeah,
a person there.
there's still craft
There's
in a
still craft.
way,
It's
but
just a
it's
different
it's
craft,
probably
right?
less compelling. Like the proof of craft when you're filming somebody at a keyboard prompting an AI, it doesn't
Yeah.
feel. Like, it's
Le-
less craftsman than like the construction paper and the
no.
scissors, you know?
And I'm reminded of this beautiful documentary, which I encourage you over to see, which is about Disney. And there is this, it's like 6 episodes, but one of the episodes is about the entry of CGI. And what they were doing at the time was they didn't know if CGI would be kind of advanced enough. And so they had these puppeteers and these world kind of amazing puppeteers sitting and working at the same time. And this one guy who I can't remember what it was called, but appeared in a documentary was kind of the rebel that did something doing at night to create a little demo of what the CGI could do. And then I get goosebumps just thinking about it. And then he shows it at the big screen at a screening. And I think, as I recall, also a little bit like was not really allowed to do.
Mhm.
And the world's best puppeteer, the person that was kind of hired to this job, said, and I quote, "And I realized I was the dinosaur now." And
Hmm.
so there's this moment where even the craftsmen realize that the CGI, the sort of the technology have eclipsed what they're able to do.
Yeah. Yeah, the challenge is it's maybe I'm riffing with you right now. It's proof to whom? If I go back to this idea of proof of craft, proof to whom? And there are, to your point, there are audience members who have a vested interest in I need it to be proven that this was made by hand. And I think to those people, proof of craft is necessary.
Yeah.
To people who don't need that proof, no proof is necessary. Or to people who would be compelled if they could just see the conversation history with Claude that co-developed the idea, that would be sufficient proof, right? Where the human is steering and reacting. And as you said, not always just saying yes. But I think the question actually is what constitutes proof and what are we trying to prove? And
Hmm.
I saw a really interesting study recently, which showed that in idea generation, a panel of evaluators, when they didn't know where ideas came from, they almost always picked AI generated ideas. When ideas were attributed to AI instead of human, they would undervalue those ideas. And when they
Huh.
were attributed to human, they would overvalue. So there's this weird thing of like proof of craft. The problem, it's the beauty is in the eye of the beholder, or the deceit, you could say, is in the eye of the beholder. And
Uh,
if the human tendency is to, by definition, undervalue AI generated work because there's some virtue to the human generated work, then I think it's incumbent upon a marketer to prove to the human that values human work that no, really humans did this.
mm.
But I don't know if that's if we're in a transitionary period. Like nobody, you know,
I think part of
I
both,
don't
right?
need to prove that I thought independent of a computer when
But I
I'm working
do
on my
think
newsletter,
that
right?
when you hear a song and it hits you and you feel an emotion, you want that emotion part is connecting with the artist pain or happiness or
Uh-huh.
whatever it is.
Uh-huh.
And I do think that humans have been taught by, many generations to understand and do that. I I think A, that you want to do that. And I think second is suddenly that turned out to be hollow. If, so to speak, the emotion was faked because there was
Uh-huh.
not a human on the other side. I think you might feel a little bit cheated or felt, faked because that the emotion that you were getting it was generated by something that you don't necessarily understand how to have an emotional connection to. And
Uh-huh.
so I think you're totally right, but I do think for a while people want to have an emotional connection to another person, or they'll start to anthropomorphize the computer, and then we're kind of like into, completely, then we're into AGI and
Mhm.
all these other things.
Mhm. Yeah, I also the other thing that resonated in the conversation was her saying, "Only do what you can uniquely do."
Mm,
It's an interesting I think it's a valuable stock taking moment for people. I actually wrote about this in my newsletter. I wrote probably one of the most personal pieces I've written recently, which was basically about what are the things that only I can do? Like, for example, parenting my children, being a father to my kids. I don't want AI to do that. And even if my kids preferred it, I would feel an existential responsibility to be a good
mm,
father. I feel it's part of one of the very few reasons can be 100% confident I am here to blank. I am here to be a good father. I think it's harder. It's in the work context. I feel it's a little bit more difficult to kind of categorically conclude, I am here to do this.
But I think, maybe there's two thoughts. One is there's definitely the question, what do you have that's not in the model? And I think for Instacart, they will obviously talk about all this preference. And so that's like a hard data that is not there. I think the other question is, and that's back to the idea of courage, is who do you want to be? Like, what is it where you are willing to take a leap of faith to be different?
Mhm.
And that, I was thinking about the other day, because one of the things we talk a lot about for entrepreneurs is that how the about page is very important because, as we talked about, users want to emotionally connect to something. But increasingly, the about page is also important for you to your model because you will
Yeah.
need to teach your model what makes you unique. Well, how should it be playing back the originality that you want to express? And so, in an ironic way, the about page is about to get important as we
Hmm.
use AI to try to become more original ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. There's the last thing I'll say on that is the question about least loved tasks and what can only you do uniquely. There's a lot of your work that isn't uniquely you. You're just kind of filling the role. But there is something I think is a personal responsibility. What is the thing that I'm doing that nobody else could plug into or nobody that's uniquely me? And I, I'm compelled. That's a question worth asking. I've been asking a little bit, as I said, personally, but I think in the work context, it's worthwhile because then you go, okay, what are all those other things that I don't like doing that I roll
Mm.
my eyes at when I have to do? How much can I get free of so that I can contribute the thing that I am uniquely capable of contributing?
I'll give you one thing actually, as you're saying this. One thing that I think because I've built a few things that were successful, I noticed that sometimes when people come and pitch an idea and I tell them that I think it's a good one to pursue, that it's almost like I give them permission to like an idea that they had themselves even more. It's almost
Mm,
like the idea has now been blessed, right?
uh-huh, uh-huh.
And it's a quite beautiful gift to have because as an entrepreneur, you have all this insecurity and you don't really
Right.
have that much data to prove that whatever you have in your mind is going to be true. So that having somebody say, you know what, I see it. I think this might happen. And it's from somebody who you think might have the ability to predict better than others, which I don't know if I do, but let's assume I have. That's actually a quite cool gift because you give the gift of encouragement, right? And
Yeah.
which is tough for GPT to do.
As an aside, by the way, encourage literally means to give courage to.
Mm,
Isn't that great?
that is great.
When you encourage someone, when you encourage an entrepreneur, you're literally giving them courage.
I like that. Maybe on that note, we should
You
end.
know, you know who else could use a little encouragement? Your old buddies, Henrik and Jeremy, could use a little encouragement in the show notes. You give us a review. You let us know what you think of the show.
And with that, please like, subscribe, send with somebody that you take heart to.
Bye
Bye.
bye.